welcome to our presentation on anthropomorphic proper names for animals in children's literature. My name is Stefanie Becerril, and I will be presenting this presentation, and many kudos to Dr. Nwokah for all of her work on this presentation, paper, and proposal. We are both faculty at the Woolfolk School of Communication Sciences and Disorders at Our Lady of the Lake University, which is in San Antonio, Texas, in the United States. And both Eva and myself are interested in language, literacy, and of course, children's literature. This presentation is going to provide a background on the use of proper names for animals as part of the anthropomorphism found in children's literature, using books in the Little Golden Book series. Books for young children are a multimodal genre of literature, and it reflects social and cultural phenomena such as behaviors, gender role, dress, communication, food, habitats, or living spaces. So the frequent use of animals with human characteristics in literature is a type of anthropomorphism that helps children to identify with animals and engage in fantasy, creating a greater variety of characters with different personalities, and it also adds humor. Children's literature uses text and illustrations to transport children into an imaginary play world where they can empathize with characters and explore deep, non-literal, and again, often humorous meanings. Burke and Copenhagen in 2004 have gone further and argue that the use of animals in children's literature creates an intellectual and psychological distance for the child so that numerous topics and concerns can be presented and discussed with much less discomfort than if the characters were human. By also giving each animal character a name, authors are enhancing the anthropomorphic or human features of that animal. Although there are many animal characters in children's literature, literary onomastics has focused mainly on human or fictional person character names rather than proper names given to animals. The act of naming is considered one of the most basic aspects of human language, but it's complicated because with animals, for example, a name affects the way we think about the animal. Names are representations that are impacted by a person's values, ideas, perceptions, and conceptions. The use of animals as story characters that talk and sometimes have names is an ancient genre, commonly used as satire for political or spiritual, including religious messaging, and for carnivalistic humor. Anthropomorphism in folklore has existed in many cultures, such as African, Native American, and Latino, oral, adult, and child folklore for centuries. Along with any proper name they may be given, animals frequently have cognitive attributes such as thought and beliefs, and personality attributes such as arrogance or wisdom. As we mentioned, by also giving each animal character a name, authors are enhancing the anthropomorphic or human feature of that animal. The name is likely to be influenced by the type of animal and whether typically domesticated or not. We suggest 4 basic animal or groups of animals: farm animals, household pets, fictional animals, and wild animals. And that this may likely influence not only whether animals are named, but the choice of names. There are definitely trends in naming animals, just as there are in naming babies. So some fun facts about the most common pet names for 2021, published by the popular pet care company Rover.com in their annual report based on survey and user-submitted pet names, found 61% of pet owners named their animal a human name. Their report went on to be cited by USA Today, who wrote about how names like Zoom, pet names like Zoom, were up 443% from 2020. COVID was only up 35%. And in another article by Washington Post on this, Nora Krung said that she named her dog Fauci, which was reported to be up 270%. So she named her dog Fauci because if you said that name in a dog park, multiple dogs howl, and she just thought it would be fun, inspiring, memorable. Some other popular names that are out there, Siri and Google, technology-inspired pet names. Pfizer is a new pet name that wasn't found prior to 2021. Britney Spears, a current pop culture name and a pet name, and also currency-related names like Doggy Coin and Britcoin. Also Grogu, which is a real name for Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian, a popular show on Disney Plus, has become a common name for dogs. Things like Lady Whistledown from the show Bridgerton. So hopefully that was interesting and funny. But again, naming after famous people is not unusual. There was another article I remember where George Clooney talked about how he named his Cocker Spaniel Einstein. The names we give animals reflect our attitudes, cultural variations, and, as you mentioned before, pop culture trends. The naming process can be individualized if it's primarily based on a pet's personality or the way the owner perceives the pet's personality. How authors or publishers choose names for animals is also likely to be influenced by their understanding of the audience readership and also what names have public appeal. Kaylin Barron in 2020 wrote a blog listing 100 dog names related to literature and placed them in categories of 4 types of literature: dog names found in books, dogs named after authors of books, book characters, and names in comics. And she argued that any of these names could also be used for other animals: cats, fish, birds, hamsters. However, we do know in the US, dogs and cats are more likely to be given human names than birds, fish, reptiles, and horses. So getting into our study, the data was from a popular children's book series called The Little Golden Books. Many of the books in the series contain animals as characters. The Little Golden Books is a highly successful children's picture book franchise targeted at an age range of 3 to 6-year-olds. And the first issue came out in 1942, and it was really revolutionary in that the children's picture books were sturdy, available in general stores, and the cost was minimal compared to other children's books. The books were written by many different authors, and they're still being published today. The earliest published books from 1942 included the well-known Little Red Hen and The Lively Little Rabbit. Later books, such as Bugs Bunny's Carrot Machine and Hopping Hens Here, show that some books in the series began to be linked to television, movie and cartoon characters, again, reflecting social change in what adults thought would appeal to children. The research questions included looking into how common it was to give proper names to animals in the Little Golden Books, the naming strategies used when proper names were given to animals, and the unique history to those names. A selection of 125 books published from 1942 to 2000 with animals was a convenient sample obtained in the archives of the Bryan Sutton Smith Library in the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, during a summer research fellowship that the first author, Dr. Nwokah, attended. From the library's collection, books were selected that contained references to animals as characters. The convenient sample of 125 were then further analyzed for those books that gave the animal characters names specifically. If different books contained the same character, only one identifier was used. So for example, within those 125 books, there were 8 different books after 1949 on Bugs Bunny. Each name was then identified as to the possible naming strategy used, and then when possible and necessary, a historical search for the origin of the name was undertaken. So out of those 125 books, 35 different books were identified with named characters. Several of these had more than one named character in the book. The types of animals were varied and included, as we previously described, farm animals like a duck, household pets like dogs and cats, fictional animals like Puss in Boots, and wild animals like a coyote. There were 10 naming strategies identified, and we grouped these into 2 categories. The first we grouped into a category called speech and language play, in which we included names that were based on sounds, as well as those based on words and manipulation or play of words. The second category included names based on a description of the animal. And this could be things like their appearance or their personality. We want to share some of our results, specifically the strategies, and we'll start with that speech and language play category. So of the 10 strategies, we should note that the strategies are not always mutually exclusive because more than one strategy seemed to be used at times. One example is animal sounds that are used to create onomatopic names like chip chip for chipmunk and yap yap for a dog also have alliteration in the use of repetition of initial sounds. Alliteration was found in several other names, such as Huckleberry Hound, Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny is an example of a name that not only has a strategy of alliteration, but has a real name, a real human name, because it was named after the animator, Ben Hardaway's nickname, Bugs. So the story goes that the naming of this beloved character came about when a fellow employee of Bugs, who is Ben Hardaway, so a fellow employee of Bugs saw a sketch of a bunny that Bugs had done and called it Bugs Bunny. Little Bear and Little Kangaroo are examples of that common strategy of using the type of animal as the proper name, so such as bear with the capital B, but often using the term little or that diminutive in front of the animal name as its proper name. Rhyming was another strategy, such as in the tawny, scrawny lion. Playing with meaning in semantic wordplay occurred in Little Golden Books. There's two examples here. So in the 1962 book called Yaki Doodle and Chopper, there were two characters from a Yogi Bear TV series in 1961. And the duck character named Yaki Doodle is not only a play on the words Yankee Doodle from a song based on the Revolutionary War in the United States and movie by James Gagney called Yankee Doodle, but also a duck is known to quack. So they are quacky. So quacky, yaki. Semantic wordplay can also occur with hyperbole, providing an opposite meaning in humor combined with exaggeration, which is in the case, or that takes place in Underdog. So the name Underdog is an anthropomorphic name for this and a superhero parody of Superman. So in this book, Shoe Shine Boy, a cartoon dog, is actually a superhero. The Underdog TV series aired from 1964 to 1973, and the Little Golden Book, Underdog and the Disappearing Ice Cream, was published in 1975. Another strategy that emerged in this study was the import of foreign words, but those we noticed were only in French, which was interesting, such as Touché the turtle. Gaston and Josephine are characters in a 1949 book, and they're a brother and sister who live with their parents in a farm in the mountains of France. They not only have French names, but are pigs dressed in stereotypical sailor clothing as they travel from the French countryside to America to visit their cousins. Georges Dupuis, the author of this book and many other books, was a Frenchman and one of the key people behind the launch of the Little Golden Books in the early 1940s. So it's not surprising he chose French names for at least some of his characters. Gaston is a French name for boys, and it's been used since the Middle Ages, but it was definitely popularized in Beauty and the Beast, an animated movie where Gaston is one of the main characters. Pierre means stone or rock in French and is used for the character Pierre Bear in the book written by Patsy Scarry and illustrated by Richard Scarry, published in 1954. You also get the rhyming there, right? Pierre Bear. The next strategy is to increase the degree of anthropomorphism by giving the animal a name and even a title that's common to human. So we term this humanizing. One example of this is the name J. Fred Muggs for the chimpanzee in the 1955 book by Edwin Shapiro. This name was given to a real chimpanzee born in 1952 in French Cameroon. And while he was in a New York pet store, he was named Mr. Muggs. He was brought then and trained to appear on TV shows such as the Perry Como Show and then the Today Show. And it was the Today Show that added J. Fred to his name. So although the title of the book is J. Fred Muggs, he's actually referred to as just Muggs when he gets the book. Another example of this strategy is Mr. Ed, the Talking Horse by Barbara Cherkazen, published in 1962, which was based on the TV series that had almost 150 episodes that started in 1961. So the concept of the Mr. Ed sitcom came from a series of short stories written by Walter Brooks that began with The Talking Horse in 1937. Another one, the 1951 book, Lucky Miss Ticklefeather. So Miss Ticklefeather has a pet puffin, and Dorothy Cunhart, who is the author, shared in an interview that the puffin's name was Paul. So Paul is a human man name. And she said that it may seem an odd name for a puffin, but the initial sound does match the initial sound in puffin, which we get that alliteration, which we mentioned before. But she said it gives an expectation of more human-like behaviors. So the second category of naming strategies is similar to how many people name their pets. In this category of descriptors, we include the animal's appearance, personality, and living environment. So one strategy of giving an animal a name related to appearance can be found in Tiger, about a cat who has stripes like a tiger, in the 1954 Tiger's Adventures, Puss in Boots, because he wore boots, and Chopper, who we mentioned earlier in the Yaki Doodle, Chopper, the bulldog, as bulldogs have pronounced choppers or teeth. Pantaloon was a black poodle who also wore baggy trousers. And some names that reflect personality include Top Cat, who had an outgoing personality, and Wiley, coyote, which is an appropriate name because the word wily means cunning. And finally, some names that reflect habitat are in some animal names like Woodsy Owl and Woody the Woodpecker, which both refer to their habitat in the woods. So again, the Little Golden Books are one example of the extensive use of animals in children's literature, prominent again even before the series was initially published in 1945. The naming of animals is part of anthropomorphism, giving animals various aspects of human characteristics such as dress and language. The various strategies we identified in naming animals in the series in children's literature mirror some of the ways humans name their pets via descriptors. However, of those two categories of naming strategies for animals, the largest is speech and wordplay. Literature is unique in that authors need to attract the reader's attention and maintain that interest via written language and visuals and pictures. So therefore, humor and the use of literary devices that we find in children's books, such as wordplay and semantic ambiguity, are ways to enhance the storytelling when read aloud. The use of proper names for different animal characters is an integral and key part of narration, combined again with illustrations of such characters in picture books. Future directions for this work could include further investigation into the origins of namings, the linguistic creativity of invented or novel names, and a replica study with additional series of children's literature, which might provide a clearer historical trend in naming animal characters since before 1945. We have some references here listed. And of course, now we'd love to get to any comments, questions, and feedback everybody might have. Thank you again.